All right, we're here. Hey, Tyler Perry's in the house, man. 1689. First time watching live.
Let's
Tyler
go.
Perry. Hey, I have a story about Tyler Perry. I did this class on race, the race flipping class, where I tell the
Oh,
story of
Black
Black
Devils.
Americans. Yeah, Black Devils. Yeah, we called it a lot of different things, but Black Devils. That was one of my all-time top 10 titles, I think, man.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of
Sure.
White Devils, Black Devils.
That one
Anyway.
and the needy.
Oh yeah, yeah, that was Lori. So anyway, so we did that. It was cool. It was like I thought it was a really kind of creative thing. I spent a lot of time on the PowerPoint slides and so on. Anyway, I got a call from Atlanta one day, and they were thinking about since it was a group of people connected to Tyler Perry, and they had been thinking about doing a movie like this where they flip the script and tell U.S. history as though.
That's so cool.
Yeah, to tell the story of Black Americans as though it happened to white people. Black people went, right. Africans went to Europe, and they came to the Americas, and then they went to Europe, and they got white people as slaves, and they brought them over. This kind of thing, right? Mm-hmm. And anyway, they were thinking of doing that, and they wanted to know, hey, we watched this. It's really cool because you'd be a consultant. And I'm like, yeah, man, that's cool. I'd love to see someone do that. But they never did. Nothing ever happened. But like these things, people have a lot of ideas, but very few of them ever get the green light.
Yeah, right. And the budget and everything.
The whole 9 yards, man. Yeah, so that was cool. I always have yeah. And the 1689 Second London Baptist Confession of Faith. Oh my God, Tyler Perry, 1689. I don't know how you get to that. It's so interesting looking at usernames and how people get to certain things in their usernames. So many really cool stories. Mine is pretty boring, actually. I unlearn, so I don't know. There's not much to that.
That's not boring.
It's like, it's not, but it doesn't have a story. Well, the story is Lori selected it for me, and we got the Gmail account, and then we just started getting it all over the place, like Twitter and Facebook. I mean, whatever it was. But anyway, all right, man. So listen, we haven't had a legit office hours with Jeff and you and Jeff for a while. Man, like 4 weeks or so. It's been a long time.
Was
Dr. N999. There's one for you. Dr. _N999. Like what is that? Like, you know what I mean? Like, yo.
It sounds yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's cool. It's so much fun, man. It's like sometimes I read just people's usernames on Reddit, and I know a lot of people use throwaway accounts on Reddit, but it still is fun to think the things that people use.
Usernames, I wonder if we could just see everybody's passwords, because passwords are so interesting too.
Yeah, you're right.
People use passwords that relate to their life.
Yeah.
You know? Mm-hmm. Just drop all your passwords.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool. All right, man. Listen. So, what do we got? Oh, class yesterday, man. Did you watch it? By the way,
halfway. It was like late night when I was watching it. It was like 10 o'clock, and but I watched the class from Tuesday and then half of class from yesterday. So whole class on Tuesday or last Thursday, and then half of yesterday.
Yeah, that's cool, man. It was it was cool. It was a really, really cool class. I had a great, I had a really good, I would just say I enjoyed it. It took a lot of energy out of me though, man. For some reason, sometimes I get home and I just come home and I have my evening beer with Lori, and then we have dinner and whatever. But last night, for some reason, it just rocked me, man. I don't know what it was, but it was fun. It was a really, really fun class. When I met Abhina, who was with Ishkan or the Hare Krishnas,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, she's really cool. Like I've spoken to her quite a number of times after class, and she's just one of these people who she's just cool. She's just a really nice person, really thoughtful, very
Mm-hmm.
aware, very kind, like a really, really kind human being.
Uh-huh.
And then, when I was talking to her, when I found out that she was lived in that community, and that she really had a great experience living there.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's just mind blowing, right? Because anybody who's like my age, Elijah, you don't have an understanding of this because we don't talk about cults anymore, like Children of God and the Moonies and the
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was gonna ask you what it
Krishnas.
was.
Yeah, we don't have any of that. But for a while, yeah, 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 because you're into obscure religion stuff too, and you have that sort of Christian background when the Christianity really attacked cults pretty hard. But in the
My
70s,
apologies. I was muted for the stream. Yes, I think I'm the only person who knows who all of these names are in this discussion besides Sam.
yeah, yeah, it's so fascinating. So in the 60s and 70s, cults started to emerge, right? It was a thing as people like communal or group living that emerged out of and a turn to the east. So what happened in the 60s is people from the east started to look to the west, and people in the west looked to the east, and so all of these groups and people were coming over from India, and lots of like the Beatles go to India. It's like a consciousness raising understanding and so on. All this stuff back and forth. But as a result of these communes started to develop, and which was kind of it also, but I don't think it wasn't so related. But like well, anyway, communes started to emerge, and people living and returning to the land, the hippie movement, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
a lot of cults, lots of and then that was a big issue, right? Because parents would say their child got brainwashed by a cult, and this is all that kind of stuff happening.
That's
And
what happened with Ishkan.
well, the Hare Krishnas are, so kids would run off and join them, man. Like these guys, like you'd
What
have to,
was it?
Jeff. Maybe you could just pull up a couple photos of Hare Krishnas.
So it's just a religious, like a very close knit group, almost cult like.
Yeah, very cult
Um,
like. Well, it is cult. It is the definition of a cult. I don't call it that. You know what I mean? But
mhm.
almost every religion. Someone said it in class yesterday. I'm sure the stream went apoplectic. But every religion starts as a cult, basically. Christianity started. I mean, if you believe, if you understand, if you accept the story that the Christians tell of the emergence of Christianity, then that was a cult, right? But that's the sociological definition. But the problem is, there's the sociological definition of these things, like a cult, a sect, a religion. But people define cult in a really negative way and not the sociological way. For me, it's a sociological expression of social community. So when
Right.
I say, like, yeah,
There's
Christianity
connotation
started,
attached to it.
yeah, right, that's right. There's no connotation; it's denotation, if anything. And so, you know, you but so Christianity was actually the purest example of a cult. You have this charismatic leader, and he starts, he or she, in this case, he started to express certain ideas, and people began following, and then had a small following, and the following would grow, and they would go places, and crowds would show up, and people would start to follow them, and then eventually more and more people, and oftentimes the leader, it sort of ends in some kind of tragic or semi-tragic way or problematic way, and most cults, groups like this, die away because it's built around the leader, and there's nobody
Right.
else to
Right.
to follow. So like in Islam, but you have to have a something in place for
Is
it to continue without the charismatic leader.
is the difference between like religions and like other cults that eventually like blow up and crumble and like are viewed as negative because there's some form of like egocentrism around the leader for these cults that are like viewed as negative, like religious
Yeah.
quote, like religion, there's not egocentrism isn't like the center of it. It's like actually
Yeah.
like selflessness and
No, that's right.
but
That's right.
then for like these other cults where it's about the leader, then it's like
Yeah.
egocentric
Yeah. Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
self-fulfilling and
Making money,
right.
that kind of stuff where it has
Yeah.
nothing to do with God or spiritual growth or whatever. Or it's
Right.
very clear from very early on that, like this Nexus or whatever it was called, that, that's a tiny little group, that one that just blew up, and there were several
Nexium?
actors and actresses. Nexium, yeah, yeah, that kind of thing, And then there's always an element of it's not brainwashing. It is brainwashing. I mean, you have to buy in, right? You have to like, you kind of go all in, and you have to suspend. What happens, generally speaking, to go all in, you suspend a certain amount of rational thinking that you have in the moment. So it doesn't mean, like, in order for me, like Elijah, if I were to just like, if you were starting this, I don't know, musical experience, and you're like, yeah, we're going to be the biggest thing in the world, and you convince me and I buy into it, I have to suspend some logic that would tell me, that this might not be the best idea, or you're going to have to give up a lot of your life that you've built, and now you're going to give that up for this. Like, so you have to.
Right.
That's what happens. So that's that. And to do that, yeah, that's like kind of that's what we call brainwashing, and
Right.
and these charismatic leaders, if you're really good at what you do, then you're going to be really good at telling your story in a way that you just has an appeal to people, right? I mean, it's like, what's the like selling products or whatever? Like, what's the one that starts with an A? Amway. It's Amway, right? I mean, like I remember I was at a conference building one time, and there was an Amway convention, and it was cult-like behavior. And one time, Lori and I were in one of these in Korea. We got sucked in. Like, these people, we were just hanging out, and it was one of these sales cult things. When we told everybody about it where we were, they were like, "Oh my God," right? But we didn't know. We were just like, whatever, because it was just a fun experience. But like, but Amway is kind of this thing that it's not cult per se, but it's cult-like. Like, you go to the sales meetings, and the one that I experienced, that I witnessed, it's like, man, chanting and singing a lot. You're in, man, and it's this full body, mind, spirit experience that you're in it with the group. It's like when you're in a sporting event and the intensity is really high, and you're cheering, and you're like, what am I cheering for? But you don't stop and ask that. You're just in it. So Amway is one of these, pyramid things, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
other ones are coming to mind, but I can't think of the names. Like the makeup ones, where they're like selling like makeup.
Avon wasn't so much like, that wasn't so much like that, but it still was. But no, but Amway, the reason it got successful is because they mastered the ability to employ some of those sociological experiences that pulled people in and made you feel really good and really connected. And you got to have that. So anyway, that's what these cults are. So like the Hare Krishnas, you see these guys, it's a group of people, and they got their heads shaved, and they're wearing robes, and they're got drums, and they're chanting, and they got the face paint in different ways. I mean, all sorts of stuff. And the young people, and they're happy, and they're connected, and they feel really good, and they have meaning in life. And so for a lot of people, the first time, man, you got some meaning in life. So
I wanted to read out, there's this is just a key thing, but it says number one, a charismatic leader, or an absolute leader, somebody who is infallible. They're special. They have authority to never be questioned. Number two, isolation from outside influences. So if your family or your friends don't agree with it, you have to cut them out. There's a very distinct outsider and non-believer versus the believer. It's also an us versus them mentality, where in an enlightened group, we know the truth versus everybody else. Criticism from the outside is viewed as persecution, not just a different opinion. Number four, controlling information. So putting up filters, what you would want to read, watch, listen. Number five, high pressure commitment. Six, emotional manipulation, 7 exploitive practices. So like asking people for money is not necessarily exploitive, but if you require them to do it, then it becomes exploitive. Loss of individual or manipulate them. Loss of identity, personal identity. 9, doctrine over person, and 10, it is very hard to leave. Essentially, the main difference I see in a cult, because again, I love cults. If anybody and I love studying the reason why people join them and the reason why the cult leaders start them in the first place. There's a podcast called Cults. It's on Spotify. I think it's even on Apple. It's from the network Parcast, and every episode they'll do 2 episodes per person. So, for instance, the one that I'm thinking of right now is Jim Jones and the People's Temple. So they do one episode kind of explaining who Jim Jones. Do you know who they are, Elijah? Have you ever heard the phrase "Don't drink the Kool-Aid"?
Oh yeah,
that's from them.
Jim Jones.
That's from Jim Jones. Essentially, he had a Marxist socialist version of Christianity in Indiana, and then he moved out to California because he believed that the world was going to explode, and nuclear war was happening. So him and all of his followers went out to like California, to this one valley where they were supposed to be protected. And then they moved to San Francisco, and then eventually the government was after them, man. So they had to go down to South America. So now not only like can they not leave the group because of social pressure, or because Jim Jones and their church would force their people to give them all of the money because they're a socialist org. So you're going to give money, all of the money to the org so that they can then bless the community, because you're going to get blessed too. High pressure commitment. You have to move to another continent, to a jungle, and then they're being lied to. So they're, the manipulation is insane. And then for the spoiler of it, Elijah, it ended up leading to the death of over 900 people from a suicide / mass murder through cyanide poisoning given through Kool-Aid, which is why we say don't drink the Kool-Aid, because the Kool-Aid had the poison in it. So if you look up Jim Jones or the People's Temple, you'll see there's a very famous picture from a helicopter the day after. And it's almost 1,000 people.
Yeah, it's really sad.
It's really sad.
So a lot of times there's I see that with a lot of these televangelists, who really do a lot of high pressure sales, so to speak, trying to squeeze money out of people. And it's not. I mean, that's what it is, right? So anyway. What I was saying in class was I had to write a paper on a cult. Everybody had to pick a different one, right? But I picked the Hare Krishnas, and so it's like, oh my God! And here's this young woman in class who grew up there, and she had a really great experience, and she's really cool, and it's different. The farm there is very different. It's a different kind of experience, and you have meals. Like you can go down, you can visit, and share meals with them. Lori and I used to go to Ishkan. There was a community in a restaurant when we lived in Prague, and they were vegetarian and organic, and we could get like a really good meal for like $1.50,
Wow.
And back in the day, which was inexpensive even back then, but and so we would, about once a week, we would walk over to the Christian restaurant and eat. It was great, and we knew we were going to get good food. So anyway, very fascinating, man.
Yeah. Interesting. Is there like anything negative about that people think about the Hare Krishnas?
Well, they think they're just brainwashing young people, but
Okay.
I mean, I can't say that. Look, who's to say that if you have a child or you have a brother or sister and they run off and join some group, and you think, that's not like my sister, she would never join that group. She got brainwashed. Well, it's like, maybe. I mean, yes and no, right? It's all relative. Like, I don't even know what brainwashing is. I mean, unless somebody, put her in a headlock and, give her like Dutch rubs and forced her to go with them into the group. Like, I don't really know what that is. I mean, I can talk about it,
Do you remember what the cult in Oregon was called?
Yeah.
The documentary is called Wild Wild West, I think.
Yeah, that was the Rajneesh guy, I
Yeah.
think, wasn't it? Or was he in
Yes.
California?
Something like that.
This guy that had Rolls Royces.
Yes, and
So
they
that-
all wore red, and they took over a
Yeah.
community. There was this whole thing. It's Wild Wild West, I
Yeah.
think, is the documentary. It's fantastic. But what the interesting thing, because you just talked about how people don't really understand how you could join a cult. So what I didn't tell you, Elijah, about the Jim Jones situation was the reason why they did this mass suicide, mass murder thing was because there was a U.S. representative who came down to the country because there were a lot of people in the U.S. who were like, we don't have contact with our family who are a part of this org in this foreign country. Like, this is scary. Like, we need to know that these U.S. citizens are safe. So they went down, and there were a couple people who wanted to go back, while Jim Jones didn't want them to go back and report. So there were a bunch of people from the temple who went and killed this representative. And I think it was like 13 people who were supposed to get onto the plane ended up dying. And then they did the mass suicide to cover up so that they wouldn't get in trouble for it. Not cover it up, but they couldn't get blamed for it. Anyway, the daughter of the congresswoman, or sorry, the congressman who was killed, ends up joining this cult in Oregon. And there's the documentary Wild Wild West goes over this, and the interviewer's like, what would your father say about you joining this cult? And she was like, it's not a cult. And as soon as I heard her say that, I was like, not because everybody who says, oh, I'm not in a cult, like, they're definitely in a cult. No. When you're in this like level of brainwashing,
at that level,
level,
right.
I'm just like, man, there's nothing that anybody can say or do. Like,
no,
something dramatic
that's right.
has to happen.
No, that's right. And the Hare Krishnas are not like that. At least not in this point in time. There were certain groups of Hare Krishnas back in the day, but at this point in time, not like that. And which is pretty. Yeah, that's wild, man. Damn.
I wonder how they curate an individual profound experience for every individual to like feel motivated, inspired to join.
Yeah, I think that. Well, it's probably different. It's going to be different for in each situation. But the key is right when you have a really charismatic leader, man, that person can do quite a number of things, right? So the one thing that we know, okay, so the story of, in the Christian story anyway, I probably have said this before, but I had the opportunity to meet Bart Ehrman, and Bart Ehrman's a professor of religious studies, but he did lots of work on early Christianity and textual criticism, where he's like, going back and really studying the earliest biblical texts, Old Testament, New Testament, to try to really understand what do we really know and what can we know and that kind of thing, So I asked him, I'm like, okay, Bart, he's secular. He grew up in a Christian family, went to a Bible college for a year, and then he dropped out and went to a secular university and studied religion. And he's very thoughtful. Like, he doesn't attack religion or anything. He just really wants to know what the truth is. But I asked him, I'm like, all right, Bart, listen, as a guy who you're not committed by faith one way or the other, it doesn't matter, but tell me what we know. Tell me what we absolutely 100% know about Jesus of Nazareth. Okay. Just give me that. That's all I want to know. What can you stand up here and say, like, well, this we absolutely know? Not the stories, right? All the stories. So for any Christians listening, it's like, look, you got to know, like, your belief system is a belief system by faith. It's not by knowledge. You have faith that the Bible is the word of God, and you have faith that all the things that happen that are written about in the version of the Bible that you're reading, which is for all of you, I suppose, English, right? You have faith that all of that is true. It's not based on logic and fact. The fact is based on the faith that you believe it's fact. It's not actual fact. It's not like right now, I write in the chat that when I look out my window right here, it's cloudy. I can't see any blue sky whatsoever, right? That's fact. Not to you, because I'd have to turn my camera around, but that's fact. Okay. Yeah. But nothing else, man. So anyway, so So, which is, I think, makes which is what makes religion really cool, right? It's that you don't build it on fact, you build it on faith, and that's the beauty of a belief system. When it's just fact, it's not a belief system. It's like, belief system in algebra or something, or calculus or numerology. It's like that's that. Okay, if you're a mathematician, I suppose it's interesting, but this is like, that doesn't make it really cool. What makes it cool is you have faith that is true, right? You have faith in God, and it's the faith that's where life begins, with the faith, right? But anyway, I think a lot of religious people get lost in that. Their religion is in their head. They're memorizing things that they read about, that God said or did or thought or felt or whatever, I don't know, or they're whoever prophets, or they it's all in their head. I'm like, well, there's something. It's got to be in your heart, man. I mean, it's fine, it's in your head. That's what it is. But okay. So anyway, I asked Bart. I'm like, hey, what do you know for sure right now where you stand at this moment in time? He said, well, we know that Jesus lived. We were quite certain that he lived, and he lived right about the time that we think he lived. He lived a short life, wasn't very long, just a few decades, and that he was killed in some troubling way. He was murdered. He was killed / murdered. Like, he was killed. He didn't just die a natural death. He was killed, and there was some kind of turmoil killing, but we don't they have some. And I said, and what do you know about other people like him? And it's like, well, there were a lot of other people who were similar to him. There were other people, but who, also that they didn't get. But apparently they didn't get the kind of following that Jesus of Nazareth got, right? And so that's it. Like, so do you know any of the stories? It's like, no, there's nothing. There's not a single story that we know that is fact. But we just can say that he had a guy and he lived.
So we don't know exactly if the cross is actually how he died, like being nailed to the cross.
Well, we have the idea that that's how people were killed back then, so it probably is. I have this joke
in a torturous way, like that's how people
that's how people died. Yeah, and it's like, which is not, that if he died today, people in 2,000 years would wear like an electric chair around their neck or something like that, But anyway, so we have the idea that that's probably how he died. And okay, so anyway, which is pretty cool, right? I mean, I was like, okay, there we go. But we don't know, right? Like, this is the thing, like, and it's just like, that's the beauty of it, is that when you have to believe something, or you have the opportunity to believe something by faith and by faith alone,
right?
There's nothing wrong with that, and it's fine. You can take every single story, man, and you can talk about the stories as though every single one is like, and then God said this, and it's some complex sentence, and then it's like, and what God really meant by that complex sentence is like, you have to have a lot of faith to believe that your interpretation of this interpretation of something that, who knows when and where it was written, but certainly not in English. It was translated at least 2 times from different languages, and that just requires a lot of faith. But that's the cool part about it, that you believe that, like, there's nothing wrong with that. So anyway.
Yeah, it's so interesting to look at the power of belief, I guess.
So that's my my take on it.
I will say the argument can't say the argument that the Bible is translated to 2 different languages and then English, because we can always go back to the language that we have and then translate that into English. Or we can do, like, for instance, there's a Greek version of the Testament, so we can go from the Greek and then how the Greeks use the Hebrew, translate into Greek, and then that's how we can English. But we don't have to do it that way, because we have the Old Testament in a lot of the old.
Yeah.
And for people who
Well,
are religious, and I don't want people to think that like every religion is a cult, because that is by far not the truth.
no. It's
I
no, that's not it. It's like how you look. It's not that. Religions. Once something becomes a religion, it is by definition, sociologically speaking, no longer has any elements of cult because it grows out of that status. So, I mean, that's just kind of the nature of it, right? But you have to start somewhere. You start with a small group of with someone who's got some kind of like Muhammad, for example, in in Islam, peace be upon him. Uh, one there are a lot of things because that writing, the Quran was written much later, so we have a pretty good idea that the Quran is the Quran, and what it says is what actually was meant to be said. But we know that we don't know anything about his personality, except that the sociologists would say, well, he probably had a pretty charismatic personality. Because if he didn't have a charismatic personality, nobody would have followed him. And that's the nature of how these things operate. So you don't, you gain interest in people, right? We're all looking for explanations for the complex questions that we have in life, and trying to answer those questions. We're all doing it. And so when you find someone who you feel, that's why people follow certain podcasts, right? We read a book and then we read the next book and the next book and the next book, because we have some idea that somebody has something to say.
The thing
So,
I wanted to say, like, for people who go to church and such, if you have, like, for my old church, I did not have a charismatic absolute leader. Like, I did not have a pastor who isolated us from outside influence. If at any point we were like, hey, I read this thing, or I have questions about this,
yeah.
his office was open for anybody to walk into and ask any question.
Well,
There wasn't like, there might have been an us versus them mentality when it comes to like Christians versus not Christians and how we want to live in the world, and maybe a little bit of politics. But like, even though that one thing may have been included from the list that I read out earlier, and this list by no means is the absolute truth, but I will say that
no,
even if it's one of those
no, but
things, that's not an issue. It's when it's
no, but that's a very different thing. That's
Yes.
not, these are, when you, in the world of Protestantism, it's, you have different people who are all following a very similar ideology or theology, and they're starting churches. So, Protestants have to start a church. If you're not charismatic, you're going to start if you join one of the large denominations, then you kind of follow their teaching. You go to theology school, you learn their teaching, you learn what you need to do to be, United Methodist or Lutheran or whatever it is, Presbyterian, and then you graduate and you get ordained, and then they put you in a church somewhere, and then there's not much you have to do. You're going to move around, and if you're not very charismatic, people aren't going to like you. If you're not very smart, people aren't going to like you, because you got to make people have to feel like they want to keep coming to church, and most people will. But if you're going to go off on your own and start your own church, like we have so many in the local community here. They build some building up on the hill not far away, and then you start attracting people. Well, if the person who's starting that isn't very charismatic, then nobody's going to come. So in that sense, you got to have like a certain charisma.
Matt asked, is it a well-known fact that most of the overall dogma around different religions, especially Catholicism, Christianity, is based on arbitrary decisions and councils? And I did want to say, a lot of people will say that like the canon of the Bible, the books that were decided to be included in scriptures, were decided in like the 300s with like Constantine. I did want to say that's not true. They didn't talk about the canon during that particular. Like, everyone goes, "Oh, the Bible was actually was created by this group of people in like this one city." No, man. Like it's so much more than that. The biblical history, for people who want to like actually dive into this, it does not start and end at the year 0. Like this is an ever-changing thing. Like Paul was not alive during, like he was not there with Jesus. His teachings are very different, but also very much are not different because they very influence. It's very Bible is fascinating. Have to be.
Did Jeff gets worked up over religion, man?
So fascinating, though.
It is fascinating. No, there's a whole. We know so many things, and we don't know so many things about how certain books that were chosen. But well, in the end, it doesn't really. You can just have the belief that they were
come and go, dude. Like there's
nah, that's right, man. No. Listen.
Like the
Anyway, I don't want to go like
particular sect of books that they particularly use. And
no, listen. No, hang on. Let me just say this. Okay, we're gonna move off this topic. Like,
I had just one comment.
If you're interested and you're really interested, you got to read. You get just dig into this, but you got to make sure that you read some secular writers, secular historians about this. Do not just read religious, like especially Protestant or Catholic historians on this particular thing with the Bible. You can't do that because you just look the good ones. You're going to get you're going to get a really interesting story, right? So they're going to get at the truth, but whatever the truth is, but it's so complicated, man, and it's so absolutely interesting. And a lot of people, I think, don't read it because they don't want to. Well, first off, they just never get around to it. It's the same reason, I've been watching the Bill or Ken Burns's American Revolution, a documentary that started this week, and man, like I thought I really had an understanding of the context of the American Revolution, but it's mind blowing. It is so good, and they're telling such an interesting story about the origin of this country, man. It is so worth watching. Anyway, so that's how I would say the same thing I would say with the origin of the Bible.
And I was just wondering, the difference between cult and religion. I would assume how dysfunction can't live within a cult. Dysfunction can't be sustained within a cult. Once it starts to become dysfunction, or once the dysfunction gets out of hand, the cultural fabric is way too vulnerable that it eventually breaks. But I was wondering, can dysfunction live within religion because of how much stronger the cultural fabric is, and then so dysfunction's able to live in religion, and dysfunction wouldn't break the fabric of religion as fast as a cult would because the cultural fabric is more vulnerable.
Well, okay. And so yes, and the issue, in order for a group of people to sustain the transfer of power from one leader to the next, okay, because that's the key right there. What happens when that charismatically, for example, people are talking about what's going to happen to MAGA when Trump is no longer the leader.
That's interesting.
That he dies, not that he steps down, when he dies, right? And people are like, okay, well, they're thinking about who could the Republicans get behind for the next president. It doesn't matter, man. There's nobody who would be able to come close to shining a light on things as Trump has been able to do. It doesn't matter, man. Everyone next to Trump is a wet blanket. And Trump, he's in Air Force One, and this reporter asked him a question the other day, and he tells her to shut up, Piggy.
So,
dude,
is another
dude. Hang on, just hang on. He told this reporter, "Shut up, Piggy." Piggy.
Oh my God!
And he gets a little blowback from it, but nothing really, nothing. Can you imagine me saying that to one of my students? It would be the end of everything, right? Can you imagine anybody saying that? Trump, the light is so strong. It is so powerful with him. Nobody is going to be able to pick up the mantle. And so the Republican Party is going to absolutely just have the oxygen sucked out of it when Donald Trump is no longer part of it. And
so
that's the charismatic leader idea, right? The more charismatic they are, the more powerful they are, the more difficult it is to to replace them. And this is why most things that start as
Mm.
cult type things never grow beyond the death of the first leader.
And does that also mean that a cult doesn't have not like what adds to their vulnerable cultural fabric is that there's not like a hierarchical system in place for
Yeah. Hmm.
someone to eventually
Yeah.
take another
Yeah.
position?
Yeah, somehow they have to do that. But a lot of times that doesn't happen because whoever the leader is, you don't want the hierarchy because it's all just built around you and everyone's sucking the energy off of you, just like Trump right now. He's not bringing anybody along. Like he can't do it with Vance, but he doesn't have a very interesting personality. So he'd have to find somebody who can be as interesting as Trump. I read something the other day about maybe one of his sons. Listen, his sons are wet blankets, man. They're like nobodies. So there's nobody, man. And he would have to bring someone along and elevate them to his level. But he can't do
Right.
that because that's just not what happens with a charismatic leader. So, that's kind of, so anyway, by the time, if something does manage to sustain itself, then it starts to have written rules and rituals that people follow and rituals you have to follow and all these kinds of things that you do, which
Right.
is why the early Christian rituals were all Jewish rituals and other rituals that were done by other pagan
Mhm.
groups at the time. So,
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
know, so this is like Jesus, the idea is the Last Supper is a Passover celebration of some sort, right? I mean,
Right.
you just have this kind of thing. So, yeah, and then once it grows out like that, then it can grow, then it becomes something that can sustain itself over time, and then it's big. And once it's big, then it doesn't really matter when you have little, like the Catholic Church, all,
I was just gonna ask you about that. That's what I was comparing it to in my head,
yeah,
like sustaining dysfunction. Like I don't know what the truth is, but how all the stories about, the dysfunction and the
yeah,
like pedophilia of like the
yeah,
Catholic
yeah, yeah,
Church and
yeah.
how
Well,
that dysfunction is sustained because the network is so deep in their
the church is,
hierarchies.
yeah. Well, it does, it risks the power of the church, and it weakens a lot of people's beliefs and a lot of people's faith. But the church is it's so big and so strong and so ritualized, man. There's
Right.
nothing as ritualized as the Catholic Church. And so, you can't break out of that. I mean, you can't destroy that. That's just part of the fabric of so many hundreds of millions of people's lives. So yeah, so it's not gonna go away.
Which
You know.
makes it like impenetrable. It's just like
Yeah, impenetrable.
it's
Yeah. Well,
um
people need it, right? People want it. We need it,
right.
and
Hmm.
so that's the nature of it, man. Um,
So interesting.
yeah, yeah. It really is fascinating, and so somebody like, um, I mean, we see it with speakers, we see it with all sorts of stuff. All right, man. So listen, uh, I'm curious about what people think of my comments on Trump. Like, I
Small correction. He didn't say shut
yeah.
up. He said be quiet.
Oh, did I say he said shut up? I thought I said quiet, be quieter. I thought I said that. Well, whatever. He called her Piggy, right? That's the key.
Oh
It
my
doesn't matter
God.
if it's shut up or quiet. But like either way, okay, quiet, Piggy. It's still the emphasis is on Piggy, man. It's like, whoa, damn, like it's like just calling someone that and and getting not having the world come crashing down. But that for Trump, though, that this is one of hundreds
So
of
expected.
examples. Yeah. But the point is that's how charismatic he is. Like you can just find 100 ways to to um accept or to excuse that kind of thing that you would never excuse with somebody else, man.
I wonder if Trump changes the way we think about charisma. Do you think at all, or has charisma just always
Yeah,
looked that way?
yeah, I don't think he does. He just is a guy
Okay.
that has it, man. I mean, and
Okay. Yeah.
for whatever reason. I mean, yeah, look, charisma, there are many different ways in which charisma expresses
Show up.
itself through people. It shows up through people, but there's no
Hmm.
question that he has a
Right. It's
he
just
has,
like each person's unique mixture, and then it like
yeah.
I don't know,
Well, I
mixture
mean,
of
this is
mixture of
it, right? I mean, it's like, look, when you watch me in the classroom, there's obviously I have a certain charisma because
For sure.
nothing else could explain why.
Or Riz.
Yeah, like Riz, Riz, yeah. No, but so nothing else could explain why students keep coming and showing up and doing it, right? I mean, obviously I'm an entertainer at some level, but entertainers are people that have a certain level of charisma, whatever that is, right?
Right.
I mean, you see it. There's sometimes are entertainers, they just stand on the stage and they just, like Bob Dylan, he just stands, he plays his guitar and he sings, he does his thing, right? But other people, it's like, man, they're like, they're trading their charisma. I don't really, I just have a certain level of it that, but the sociology Rizzler. Yeah. Well, I mean, look, for me personally, I just am fascinated by when I see Donald Trump say something like that, and it doesn't even affect him, man. I'm just like, I can't not be absolutely and utterly fascinated by it, man.
Right, like the pass. Like,
Yeah,
how
you get that, man. I remember when they caught him, they got that hot mic thing with him talking when he was getting off a bus back in like 2014, 2015, I don't know. So it was the first election when he was like really picking up steam. Grab him by the pussy thing, remember that? And
right, yeah.
And I remember, I'm thinking like, okay, this is gonna take him down. Basically, he said he forces himself, he forces them to kiss him, he grabs them in a genitalia, like, okay, man, this is good. Okay, that's gonna take this guy down. And it didn't.
Right.
And that's when I said, okay, this guy, he's operating at an entirely different level.
How how there was the commentary on like Trump was exposing implicit attitudes, or is it like, do you believe that? Or
I don't know. No, listen, he doesn't make it okay. It's not like people say, oh, he's making this okay, and he's telling other people that they too can say these things and treat women in this way and whatever the case. It's like, no, they can't. You cannot do what Trump did. If you do, forgetting about world and conversation, you can't even go to any group that even supports Trump, and you can't say the things and do the things. If you went to some Republican gathering and you told someone, hey, be quiet, Piggy, you would be taken down, man. Like nobody can do that, but he can do it. And that's what, for me, that's for somebody like me, I find it so absolutely fascinating. But so people be like, oh, he's making it acceptable. No, he's not. Nobody else can do it. That's the point. That's what makes him so interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, like nobody else can do it. Do you think people feel this sounds so crazy, but like some people are like feeling seen that have certain attitudes, or like our leader is saying, is like, I feel like I'm being seen through him or something like that.
Well,
and so then
yeah,
maybe they can't act like him, but they can feel like
they can feel something, and the more kind of mean he is or whatever, which I think we could all agree is mean. Calling someone Piggy is mean. That's just, you don't have to, there's no justification. There's nothing. It's just mean, unless you have a pig. You know what I mean? If I have a pet pig and I call it Piggy, like, that's okay, right? Or my dog, because my dog's overweight, I call it, hey, Piggy, stop eating. Like, okay, that's fine, right? But like, it's just mean. And so anybody can agree with that. So like, you can kind of go, I don't know, man. It's just a very, and that's fascinating, man. I don't really
it was
know
so
what to say.
interesting the way, I don't know.
And people don't even know they're justifying it. That's the thing, right? Like you can't. They don't even know that what they're justifying. All they know is there's this charismatic person, okay, and it's Donald Trump, and he's been able to muster up all this energy and power. Okay, and somehow he says certain things that you like. The other things you don't like. Half of what he says, most of his followers wouldn't like. If they really listened to what he's saying and they understood the implications of that, they would be like, "Wait, hang on a second. I don't support that. Like, I don't want that. You know, like, but whatever. It doesn't really matter."
How do people categorize it?
What's that?
People categorize it as authentic, right?
Yeah, that's authentic,
Like,
which
like
is it. That's what people. So you go that whole realm and say like, well, I just like when people talk like that. Well, I get it, but you got to understand, it's not just people; it's actually also the leader of the nation. Like, I'm not sure that speaks very well to you and I and everybody else who's an American citizen to have the leader calling someone, telling them to be quiet, Piggy. I just don't.
And how do they transform that into authenticity, or like how do they turn that into authenticity?
Well, because it's the kind of thing that you wish you want people. Look, when I'm in a formal situation and I have to act formally, right? A couple of weeks ago in Korea, right? There were several times when I'm in this very formal situation and I can't just be me. I can't do the kinds of things I do in my classroom. I'm on stage. I'm in front of, like, I don't know, 600, 700, 800 people. And people are watching me. And I have to sit in a way I can't. I don't want to cross my legs. I don't want to this. I don't want to that. I have to respond to people in a way that it's very formal, and I don't want to. I want to just be me. No, hang on. It was fine. I was happy doing it, but I could have just been less formal. And there were probably a lot of people in the audience who would have expected me to be less formal because they watched my class and they're like, "Oh, look at this guy." But look at him now. He's like Sam Richards. He's this person who I don't know who he is because he's acting in a way that I've never seen him act, but I'm acting in a very formal way, right? Mm-hmm. Well, there are times when you just have to do that, and that's okay. But there are other times when people just want to see something that you just want to bust out of the roles, man. Just like I did at this one place where I spoke. I just busted out of my role for a hot minute. And I told her a joke. I did this thing. It was kind of a funny joke. And it worked, but probably not for everybody, because for some people, they were just like, whoa, hang on a second. You just did something that nobody ever does here in Korea, right? Like, what did you do? Like, but, because it's me, I can get away with it at some level, right? Because you'll see that. They expect it. Right. But yeah, it's like not a... Yeah, people enjoy that. I enjoy that. But I get tired of people just the same nonsense, man. They just say the same stuff. But then there's a lot of things that I don't. You got to take the good with the bad. And
yeah, I totally get that. And it's very interesting just how broad the pool is, I guess, for Trump, of like what can be considered. Man, this guy is just stepping out of roles finally, like saying Piggy, like finally somebody, like
yeah. Is
there?
So listen, hang on. Ziesendorf says, first half hour we talked about cults and religion, and now we've shifted toward Trump and politics. Is there a difference? There is a difference, but listen, man, you cannot look at Trump, the MAGA movement, and because of who Donald Trump is, you have to look at this through the lens of a really charismatic leader, and every single cult in the world starts with a charismatic leader, else they don't start. I mean, that's the nature of it, right? Because nobody's going to follow anyone who doesn't have something to say, okay? And they will follow them, but not very long. So, it's like, it's just like you can watch your history documentaries, but unless you're a complete history buff, at some point in time, you watch 2 history documentaries, then you turn over to entertainment and some reality television show. You need to be entertained. So that's the nature of it. So everybody, you start with that, right? Okay, so that's where the MAGA movement just happens to be built. The Tea Party movement wasn't built around a charismatic leader. I mean, we didn't have any leader. It was a movement. But this is a very different story. And so, yeah. So I don't know. So anyway, Ziesendorf said, yeah, is there a difference?
That's Eric, by the way.
Oh, all right. Yeah. It's like, yeah, there's a difference, but I don't know how much. I don't know what
it would be very interesting to go through that list of 10 common warning signs. What would be checked off the list? Honestly.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it because the MAGA people would cancel us. But this is why I don't talk about this as a sociologist.
The same thing, we could do it for Obama. Like, I'd be willing to do it for everybody to see it. But the thing is, I would want people who would be on MAGA to be in the conversation as well, because I wouldn't want, to be seen as, oh, well, of course you might see everything as him being a cult leader or whatever. Like, I think the conversation that we had with conservatives like 2 years ago, I think maybe we should do another one of those with like some online peeps where we just ask them about different aspects of MAGA and why they vote.
Yeah, that would be
vote the way that they do, and talk to libs about the same thing on the other side.
Yeah, libs, libs. Yeah, right. Libs.
Sorry, lefty. I don't know.
No, that's all right. Libs is fine. It's just like, you were at your gathering all weekend. So that's why I'm sure they were throwing libs around.
They were saying much worse than lib. Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, that's it's pretty fascinating. I mean, I try not to get too riled up about it. For me, it's just a very interesting sociological expression. Maybe that's what kind of makes this Hey, this morning I was on a podcast. It's called About God. It's a Christian group based out of a church down in Texas, and they have this podcast, and they invited me on. And that was pretty cool, man, talking about. I mean, we talked a lot about universities and so on, but in the end, I kept steering us back over to God, because I'm like, come on, man, you guys are a Christian podcast, so I want to. Yeah, it was cool. It was a lot of fun. They asked some really cool questions, and by the way, hang on, I just got to look at this. I think you could make an argument evenly between Obama and Trump being a cult based on the 10. I don't think so. No, you can't do that.
I said Obama. I said I think you could make an argument between Obama and Trump, saying that both of them could be seen that way, and I could also make the argument that they could not be seen that way. No,
I couldn't even begin to make an argument that Obama that was true for Obama. It just was. He did not have. Okay. For a very tiny fraction of people, but there's just no. Trump is in a different world by himself, man. And you cannot like him, but you got to be absolutely, utterly fascinated by him, man.
Yeah, because it isn't like what makes Trump cultish is that he really appeals to a certain group of people, and to others, like he disgusts them in like some way.
No, that's not what it is. No, that's not what it is. No.
What is it?
No. It's somebody who has some kind of.
In terms of the comparison, because I was like, Obama seemed. Like,
no, but you don't even compare them. They're not even people on the right. They make these stories up about Obama, about who he was and what he was, and I'm like, but that's just not. Do not even put him side by side with Trump. That's not what. That's just not it. And I don't say that's not defending Obama. It's like, look, he's just that was an entirely different movement, and it's a different person. And what you're doing by doing that, actually, if you're a Trump supporter, you're taking away from Obama did it. It's like, look, man, Obama didn't do a quarter of the things that Trump does, nor could he. He had the power to do that, nor would he. And by doing that, you take away from what is really the absolute utter fascination of this human being called Donald Trump.
I wasn't saying that I thought Obama was cultish. I was just saying what makes Obama not cultish was like the way that he spoke as a politician, or his intention. It seemed as if he was trying, at least what I remember when I was like the age that I was, because I remember when he was first inducted, I was still in middle school. Yeah. But then He just seemed like his speech and rhetoric was to like unite people, at least the way that he spoke when he would have speeches, and
Well,
like his goal and intention
yeah.
was to appeal to everybody, like appeal to the United States as a nation. But like the way that Trump speaks sometimes doesn't always intention doesn't seem like he's trying to appeal to
Yeah,
everyone.
I think I think you could say that. And a lot of Trump people wouldn't say that. They would say that no, Obama was a divider. I'm like, look, man, go back and listen to some of Obama's speeches and some of the stuff that he said. Listen to it in the context now of having listened to Donald Trump for so many years. Obama, it just did not even, it was nothing like Trump, man.
Yeah.
Nothing. And
I
I'm not
agree with
saying
that.
that because I didn't vote for Obama. I had 2 chances to vote for him. I didn't vote for him either time. So I'm not saying that, but it's just like, no, this is not it. And so
Like the rhetoric was completely different, right? And
that's very
just
different, but I don't think Trump is necessarily trying to divide. I think it just kind of,
yeah,
so that's
it's
not it.
just the way he
Yeah.
is, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think so. Yeah. I just think there's any kind of, Ziesendorf said, I think I agree. There's no kind of Obama worship. It's just different, man. People didn't put Obama head. It's just different, and it's pretty intense. All right. So anyway, listen. And I just think that, yeah. All right. So what else do we have, man? What do we got? Okay. So we
Class yesterday.
do we have any questions?
And Thursday but I was just gonna say I found it really interesting how you're pushing the students to discrimination, and we
Yeah.
didn't see it.
Yeah. By the way, cognitive dissonance. Obama was a centrist. Like he got pigeonholed as a far left person, but he absolutely was not far left. He was very much a censor. Look, the United States, we are a very conservative nation built with certain policies that appear left leaning, but we are not a left nation at all, man. We are not a left nation at all. And so it seems like it, with certain things, right, that appeared to kind of get out of control, right, with some of the gender stuff and so on. But it's just, no, it's just, okay. Anyway, we've got 20 questions. All right, man, what do we got?
So this is from yesterday's class. Just Rocket said, removing the question of validity in a country like the United States, is it possible to enact policies that satisfy everyone and build towards something for a country to stand on? So is it possible for the country like the United States to enact policies that satisfy everybody?
No, it's not possible. And going back to Ziesendorf, with Trump being purposely divisive, I think I misspoke in that way. I think it's like they don't see themselves as purposely divisive. Well, maybe they do. You know what? I don't know anymore, man. I start to think they must really. They're just hammering away, like all this stuff on immigration. Yeah, I guess probably pretty purposefully. Yeah, I think I'm always trying to find the sociological middle ground in so many things that sometimes I miss.
Do you think it's the perspective of like a parent being like, you got to accept the hard truth? Like I'm not trying to be divisive, but like, this is the hard truth that you just got to know. Like Trump, maybe like Trump feels that way, even though he's like that's not his intention.
Maybe it's okay. Maybe it's also this. Here, let me throw something else out. I just can't imagine that any human being,
from his perspective, truth, not himself.
Yeah. I got that. I think it's hard for me to imagine someone could be just so mean and belligerently mean, and I think I have a hard time with that. I just can't even imagine it. So therefore, I can't. When I see it, even with my own eyes, I see it. I always feel like, okay, there's an element of acting in there that's not really what's going on, because I can't. That's my weak side, that I don't have that in me. Like I can't. Like I'm not I don't. Like some people are really good at plotting out a course and being very very like first off being manipulative in some way, and I'm not. I don't even know what that would look like. I can't even begin to go there. Plotting out a course and being very competitive with other people and be like, hey, I'm going to make this thing happen, and I'm going to push that person to the side and that person's side over there, and I'm just going to move forward in that way. And I don't have that. I can't do that. And so I think there's a lot of stuff that happens in the world of politics that, you know, in a way, I can't believe it. I think it almost keeps me there's almost like an innocence about it or something. There's a naivete, and you could argue, or something I don't really know. It's a very strange thing, man.
I wonder
So
if
I'm not a good person for that. Really, I'm a uniter.
Right.
I'm more in that way. Like I'm just going to bend over backwards to find some way to bring balance or unity to something, and that's probably, but to a fault for me.
Right.
By the way, I mean I think
It makes
it's
me
a fault. Yeah.
makes me wonder, like Trump's upbringing, like his sociological address, like the way that maybe his father spoke to him, or the way that
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, whoever. It's
Expectations
like I said
of
yesterday in class about Elon Musk. He's like a guy that got his lunch stolen when he was in junior high school. Every day, someone was stealing his lunch. I feel like that's probably true of Trump. It's like, dude, stop. You're fighting some battle that you were fighting back when you were 13 and 14 years old, man, and people were calling you names or something. Like,
It's so
stop.
interesting.
Whatever it is, it's so transparent, man. Like you can't be a 14-year-old anymore. So stop.
Yeah. How much, man, that's so interesting, like how much mental health or isn't a part of the like checks to make
Yeah.
sure that someone is like capable, or just like,
Yeah.
how much people have addressed like their
Well, it wouldn't matter.
traumas, or
But the nature of a charismatic leader is it wouldn't matter anyway, because anything that would happen, you would make an excuse for it. And that's what happens, right? So with these extremist leaders, it's like, hey, look, man, this Rajneesh guy, he had like 20 Rolls Royces, and people were they were going out and working 20 hours a day to bring money into this gathering, to this farm, this place. And
the
they
cognitive
were
dissonance
asking,
again.
they were asking people like, how do you feel about that? He's got the 20 Rolls Royces, and they just justify it. Like everybody, he's
like
having sex with
Thursday.
their wives and their daughters. You know what I mean? And they're justifying it. I mean, it's just like, it doesn't matter what happens when the person's charismatic enough. People are going to justify. They're going to just be in denial about what's going on, right?
And isn't it the same thing as similar to last Thursday's class, when you couldn't get the students to say that there was by any way an attack on who they were, like through discrimination, or like actually, because you were saying discrimination is actually just, it's something that's showing that people aren't being responded to. It doesn't mean that it's intentional or unintentional, but like there was all this justification to make sure that they're like, there's no way that this could be about me, or like,
it can't be about discrimination. Well, it also is that people don't want to believe in discrimination, and people of color, people who are most likely to experience discrimination, also don't want to believe it, because and this goes opposite of what we imagine. We imagine that people of minority groups are always arguing, and all they do is talk about discrimination. Actually, they really don't. They don't want to believe it. People want to believe. We wake up in the morning and we want to believe we have a fair shake, and that we'll be treated fairly, and that everything will be fine as we go about our day. Nobody wants to live your day thinking that life is stacked against them. They're going to experience all these negative things. It's like, people don't do that. And so, therefore, when I put up in the front, someone who's Asian, Latino, Black, whatever, it's like or if there's someone who's gay, whatever it is, it's just like they want to see the good, the positives. So that's the opposite. That's the irony and the opposite. And by the way, what I just said a couple minutes ago about, like, so when I'm saying this, people don't want to believe it. Well, that's why I'm really, and what I said earlier about like how I try to unite things. I'm always like trying to find some way to kind of bring something together. That's why I don't trust myself a lot of times in being able to see truth, because I do so quickly go to some kind of unity, but maybe more so when I'm on the stream, like when I'm talking, like here in office hours in particular, I know that I'm talking to a very complex audience, and there are people on the right, people on the left, people in the middle. And so I'm trying to find ways to bring balance, right? And so I'm not going to be willing to very quickly just argue it out, you know? And so and the problem is there's sometimes when I got to be like, nah, this isn't about balance, man. Like, you know, like whatever it is, this is like, I just got to call it for what it is, you know? And yeah, like I was reading this article about, which is kind of interesting. Hang on, I'm going to pull it up here. It's about DeSantis's, this college in Florida. It's called the New College of Florida, and it was this really very left university. It's very small. It was very left for a long time, and then he sort of took it over and put a new president in charge, and you know, and his idea is that, you know, this college was losing a ton of money, man. You're like, come on, this is terrible. You're far left. You're not teaching students. You're not giving them the truth. You're not giving them anything. And like, it's run by this. It's according to, you know, DEI and critical race theory and all this kind of stuff. So we're going to go in and we're going to take it over and we're going to bring it back. Well, they just have poured tens of millions of dollars into this university, man. And also they were overspending their money, right? They were spending too much of state money because it's a state university. So DeSantis takes it over and like, hey, suddenly, Drew, I don't know, what is this, like $60 million at this university? I'm like, dude, what? And fewer students, right? Like the student body dropped by like 500 people. It only had about 1,200 students, and now it is about 700. So, wow. You know, and like, they spent $70 million, man. It's like, dude, what are you doing? You know what I mean? But people just don't. We can convince ourselves of so many things, you know, so many things. Mm-hmm. Yeah, mm-hmm. And I'm afraid of that for myself. I'm like really, really careful about. One of the reasons I'm just careful about the things that where I get lost and I'm not able to see certain things because because I've been trained to, and I've set myself up to appeal to a very complex audience. And so like, I got to find middle ground constantly. And like, I don't want to like be taking on different people. So sometimes I can't take middle ground. I got to be like, dude, this is a problem.
Right, you know? Right. The responsibility you feel.
Yeah. I think that's definitely a thing. So, and I don't, but I'll be the first one to say I don't trust myself a lot. That's very, I don't. I think it's different when I'm with students. You know, my job with students, I think I do a pretty good job in making sure that I keep a certain balance in there. But but when I'm not, like if I weren't on this, if I didn't look at, if I wasn't thinking about the audience, like in this conversation right here, I would probably say, there's a few things I would probably say differently. Yeah, maybe not. Like, I don't know. Maybe
because you don't want to, like, you understand that people maybe, I'm hearing you say, like, you would say things differently because you understand, one, you said we already confirmed like the responsibility you feel and maybe not wanting to entrench people on the sides that you know exist. And so still doing what you do as a teacher to make sure people are thinking about the contrast or the because of just that responsibility that you've built for decades.
Yeah, it's hard. It's difficult, right? And that I can see something really fascinating and whatever it is, right? It doesn't matter whether it's somebody as complex as a Donald Trump or something, right? But I gotta say, man, I did listen to a speech by Obama the other day. It just popped up somewhere. It was like 4 minutes long. He was talking somewhere, and he wasn't reading it. He was just talking. And I don't care what anybody thinks about Obama, but man, it was
so eloquent.
I'm an academic, right? And it was really nice to hear someone just string sentences together, and he was being really thoughtful, and he was not, you wouldn't have known whether he was liberal or conservative or who he was speaking with. It was just really, really interesting. And once in a while, I hear that kind of thing coming out of like Donald Trump. Once in a while, it's like his brain hit all the fog lifts, and it gets settled down, and he stops being combative, and he's actually very reflective, and he will speak for 3 or 4 minutes, and be like, oh, that was pleasant. You know what I mean? But I think it just was far more often pleasant with a lot of other leaders in the past. Yeah, a lot of other people. Yeah, it's far more pleasant. And so I will just say that, you know.
Yeah, I wonder when it's happening to his nervous system.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Yeah, that's so. I said, listening to Obama was refreshing after years of Bush. Yeah, you know, and the thing about Bush was, yeah, Bush sometimes. Remember, like all the Bushisms and stuff. It's just like, oh my god. But here's the thing, man. Bush had a social intelligence that was unmatched,
really?
man. Yeah. One of my colleagues went to college with him, and at Yale.
Really?
So he knew him very well, and they were in a fraternity together, and so he knew Bush the younger, and man, the stories he told, he was like, this guy was, he was the man. He was just he just had that personality, and he was really a nice guy, and he was the thoughtful guy. He's the guy that, you know, when something happened to somebody, he, you know, got everyone together and had them sign a card and been like, no, we got to do this, and they present the card, you know, sympathy card kind of stuff, you know, and I mean, all sorts of stuff like that, right? That it was it just was a high social intelligence, man. You could tell the name of your mother and your was, and 10 years later he would see you and he would remember that. I'm still thinking about the story you told about your mother, you know.
Oh wow.
And how's your dad doing? He would name your dad. That is just something, man, that you can't. So as much as there were a lot of Bushisms and stuff, he had that going for him, which is something I don't have going for me, man. I can't even, half the times I don't even remember your name. I have to like flip. I have to push my cursor on your photo to be like, wait, what's your name again? And Alijah. Yeah. Right. I don't remember my own name. That's why I call Lori dog and bro and like, wait, what's your name?
When I was young when George Bush. Are you talking about like the George Bush and during when I was
dude, you were
like 8
you
or something.
You would have been a little. George Bush got elected in George Bush the senior got elected in 2000. So when were you born?
96.
Yeah, so you were 4 years old.
That was junior.
You were 12.
Damn, senior was after Reagan.
But then junior, I think I was like 8 or something, or like 9.
You were 8. You were 4. So you would have been like 11 or 12 when he stepped out of office, when Obama came in.
Because I remember with George Bush, he got like a a shoe thrown at him.
Yeah.
I was a kid. He was watching the TV, and he got a. Oh, that's what.
That was in Iraq, yeah. Because in Iraq, you know, the thing that's why, like in Muslim culture, you don't sit with your foot up, so your bottom of your foot is pointed at somebody else. That's disrespectful. So then, if you take your shoe, and you like kind of hit somebody with it, that is the bottom of your shoe, man. That's like worse than hitting them with your fist. So it's like, yeah, that's a problem. So anyway, the person threw their shoe at him, and which is, just like pretty bad, and then I don't know. I don't remember whatever happened to that guy. So I read something recently in the New York Times. There's an article about what happened to him.
Oh, really?
The guy that threw the shoe. Which is pretty funny. But yeah, yeah. I don't know, man. It's such a fascinating thing.
It's interesting.
All right, listen, man. Why don't we head out? I don't know. I have to plan tomorrow's class. I don't know what we're gonna do.
I did want to make one correction on my part. The documentary is called Wild Wild Country. Highly recommend. Oh.
Wild Wild Country.
Not Wild Wild West.
Is it depressing though, man?
Oh,
wait, hang on. The debate board said Bush's smirk after the shoe was launched was hilarious. That's the thing. George Bush was really funny, man. So like he probably, and the smirk was him probably thinking that was funny. Like, oh my God, I can't believe this guy just threw a shoe at me. Like, he was really a funny and kind of a nice guy, which is different than Darth Vader Cheney. You know what I mean? But like, yeah.
Interesting. I didn't know that about him.
Yeah, very funny guy, man. And also also self-deprecating. Yeah.
Okay.
In his way. Yeah. I'm not gonna say anything. Look, in terms of the presidency, in terms of invading Iraq and all of that he just gave that up to. Those were forces that were beyond him, man. He wasn't running the show like that. He was basically being told what to do. That's my take on it. So, yeah. Okay, so hang on. I have a question. Do you think Obama has more of a capability of laughing at him and have fun than Trump does in terms of campaigning? Dude, I've never seen Trump laugh. He's never laughed. I've hardly ever seen him smile. This guy is like, he's the Grim Reaper at every level, man. God. Yeah. Yeah. And he didn't pick the vice president, man. Bush didn't pick Cheney. Cheney got picked for Bush. So this is really, really important, man. Bush was not even being the governor of Texas, like Bush, man, there's nothing in that guy that I've ever seen that he had an ounce of deep motivation about him, man. He was just in a particular position and he could do it and he was good at it. And so they pushed him forward, man. Yeah. Anyway, do Trump jokes all the time. He jokes. Yeah. I don't hear him laugh though. He makes these jokes, but I don't hear him laugh. I don't think I've ever heard him laugh.
Right.
In a way that he's laughing, But
he's just letting go.
Yeah, just letting go, man. I don't know. So anyway, Sea Devil. I don't know, really. I just don't hear that. But maybe I gotta go find some footage of Trump laughing.
Sam, to end our stream today, why don't you go?
Wait, hang on. Hang on. Hold on. I want to see some video of Trump laughing. Yeah. Okay. All right. I see it. The laughing is okay. Hang on. Trump's not doing a deep laugh. Okay.
Yeah, it's not letting go.
It's like he's like gonna hold it in, and I see a couple of these videos like that. I can see it. But even his smile feels, there's like it's for a moment.
And it's like to appease, or to like not to appease, but
it's a smirk. It's a smirk. Being in a mass is like a smirk more so. It's not a laugh, man. Like I never heard a hearty belly laugh out of the guy, but who knows? I don't know. Let me. I'll start looking for it. Sea Devil. I'll start looking for I'll start looking for Trump deep laughter. Okay,
send a
that's what I'm
compilation.
looking for. Okay, all right. Send us a compilation of Trump. Clearly, it's not common. Okay, if I can say that, I've watched this guy so much, and if I can say, I'm not. I've already spoken that I'm utterly fascinated with the guy, and I'm telling you, I don't. It is just very uncommon. And I've never seen him in a deep belly. I've never seen him. That's not to say he isn't, but I'm not watching him 24/7, but I'm watching enough
Right.
and I'm not seeing it. And that tells me something. It's like, it's not common. So, you know, I think I could say that for sure. But
like what
I
he might
will,
be displaying to the world versus like
yeah,
when the camera's not on him.
yeah, maybe, I don't know. Whatever. But it's like, it's one of those things. Okay.
Mhm.
All right, listen, man, we're going to blow out.
He makes Trump laugh loudly.
Yeah.
Also, the dad joke. For the U.S. Mint stopped making. Does this mean I can government?
Dude, that's pretty good, actually. Yeah.
I could tell from the silence.
Yeah. 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 No, I see that. I have, dude, that's a good one. Yeah. No, by the way, I've seen Trump make jokes. I'm not talking about him making some jokes that are wry. He has sort of a wry sense of humor. I'm talking about him really having deep belly laughs.
And that's so interesting because the person that tells the joke is the one with the responsibility, the one that has the power, the one that is like the joke teller. But to be laughing and be guttural and like it's like you're giving up a piece of your, I don't know. There's something about that I'm feeling. I don't know.
Something. Yeah, something. Anyway, but I guess it's like telling dad jokes. Like Jeff just tells dad jokes and he's not laughing at them. He's just laughing. Yeah. Yeah. All the military leaders were in stitches. Yeah. 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 All right, man. All right, we're out. Let's go. I got to go get class. I got to think through what we're going to do in class tomorrow and get us ready for the next steps. All right, everybody. Thanks for the conversation and whatever. Alijah, Jeff, thanks for the conversation.
Thank
Alijah,
you.
I'll see you tomorrow at the prison.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And
Yeah.
and at Social 19.
Oh
For
no,
a little
and
bit.
actually, and tomorrow morning you and I have a meeting, right?
Yeah, yep.
At 9. Yeah. Okay.
At
We'll
9
talk
o'clock
about that.
sharp.
All right, everybody. Be well, and we'll see you. Next class will be streamed. No, it's streamed. Jeff, it's streamed on Thursday, November 20th at
I know I
4:30.
didn't get to update the bot. I'm sorry.
That's all right. Don't worry about it. Okay, man. All right. See y'all. Thanks.